have to be a part of building something good and noble and true and connective in service to others. That's what I love about what you are doing with the philosophy, is like, how can I apply this to my life to make my life better?
I loved the book. I thought it was fascinating. And I had a spiritual experience this morning. I got up early. I watched the sun go up. Then I dropped my kids off at outdoor camp. And then I went running in this this sort of forest. It was so dense, I had to take my sunglasses off because it was so shaded, and I didn't see a person for like an hour. And then I got to do a little writing. There's a great Seneca quote that I thought might resonate with you. He said, "The whole world is a temple of all the gods." And I think about that every time I sort of get to do something like that.
The whole world is the temple of all the gods. I love that.
Yes.
Where is this paradise in which you are jogging for an hour without seeing a soul in the depths of the verdant forest? Where the hell is this? I want to go there.
Rural Texas. It was actually I undersold it. At one part of the run, I'm going and I sort of come across this, like, it's this little sort of limestone overhang, this ledge. There's a little sign next to it, and I read it, and it's a cave that they date sort of indigenous activity to as long ago as 8,000 years ago. So I'm on this sort of trail that hunters have been using for basically, longer than we have recorded history. And, you're just sort of one with something much older and bigger and more powerful than yourself.
See, it was a sacred space for over 8,000 years, maybe 10,000 years. And you connected with that same sacredness. But I love this because on so many levels, because look, you had your family, you dropped your kids off, you were in your body exercising, you were connecting with nature, you were doing some writing. Now you're doing some deep conversationalistishness with me. But when I think about, sacred spaces like that cave or the people that lived there, one of the things I love to think about this idea of sacredness, which is one of the central themes of my book, is that it's all connected, it's all sacred. That we don't think of sacredness as a shrine, but the gods, like you say, are inhabit all things. So, I talk about the poet Basho, the haiku poet, who in medieval Japan would go from temple to temple writing haiku, leaving them behind. And haiku, of course, being a reflection on nature, and he would leave them as a holy offering. So here's this intersection of spirituality, nature, art, travel, being in your body, contemplative prayer, where it's not compartmentalized the way it is today. It's like, I'm spiritual when I'm in church on Sunday between 10 and 12. And then I'm working all this time. And then when I'm in nature, I appreciate that. And I make art, and that's a hobby on the side. But, it's a kind of a clarion call for humanity to come back together and kind of merge all of these different modalities into one kind of spiritual practice.
And it's totally free and available. There's no intermediary between you and it. There's nothing you have to pay for to access it. Yeah. There's nothing you have to build. It's just there the second that you want it. There's sort of it's that kind of transcendental form of sort of church, which is the natural world.
Yes. Amen. Amen. And it's there. Even if you can't go outside, there can be a corner where you are contemplative and where you meditate. There can be anyone can at any point in time find some kind of experience that is a thread to the transcendent.
Do you feel weird talking about this stuff? There is something. I don't know, shameful is not the right word, but there is this sense of sort of awkwardness or weirdness, or you don't want to be judged when we go, I don't want to be too woo woo about it. But there is some part of us that I think is reluctant to talk about these things.
Yeah. I know one of the things in my book that I bring up right away is like, why the hell is the guy who played Dwight talking about spirituality? So that might be a little weird. I imagine for you, you look like you look like someone who grew up watching The Office. Maybe you didn't at all, but
I've seen every single episode multiple times, of course.
Yeah, there's something about you that's kind of like, I can spot an Office fan. There's something, it's a little bit nerdy and a little bit wild. And so that must be especially weird. Yeah, it is weird, Ryan. It's something that I struggled with for a long, long time. And for me, I guess maybe it's just age, because I'm 57 now and I just don't give a fuck anymore. And people think, so many people think I'm a left-wing radical. People think I'm like a right-wing weirdo, a spiritual woo-woo weirdo. It's like, okay, everybody, you think whatever you want. I'm living now, I wasn't always, now I'm living a very, a life that brings me great meaning and satisfaction. I've learned a few things along the way, especially when it comes to spiritual tools and applying them. And I just fearlessly talk about it. But yeah, culturally, these conversations, we don't talk about death. We don't talk about the meaning of life, like, and our finding our purpose. And, part of it is kind of being a male man in this day's world where, we're not allowed to be vulnerable or share our hearts, and anything that is, at all touchy feeling is an anathema, to today's male. And you're a cuck and a pussy and a failure and a loser if you do. But I just stopped caring. But I'm in a fortunate position too, because I made some money from some TV and Soul Pancake and some other things, and so I'm doing fine. And I want to just share some ideas with folk. That's what I love doing.
You are in a fortunate position, but also that fortunate position makes it slightly more awkward, right? Because if you have any sense of self-awareness, which you joke about in the book, but you're like, who am I to talk about these things? There's this sense like, well, am I qualified? Do I have a certain degree? Do I have letters after my name? When you talk about this stuff that's worked for you and you want to share it with people, there's always this suspicion like, am I the crazy person that everyone's laughing at? Am I like in a cult? Have I gone off the deep end? Mm-hmm. Should I just keep my mouth shut? There's all the things you mentioned, and then there's just the general like, who am I? Should I leave this to other people?
How do you deal with that? Because you're the guy who like is the face of the popularization of this really powerful philosophy. And you're a kid.
It's weird. It's very weird.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's weird, especially, I imagine you've gone through this a little bit too, where it's like you have the thing that you're most comfortable in, the medium you're most comfortable in. Like for me, that's writing. I would love to live in a world which wasn't that long ago, where books were the primary medium where these discussions were had.
Yeah.
That's where I feel comfortable. No one would know what I look like. I could spend lots and lots of time getting every word right. But that's not where the conversation is happening. That's where the conversation happens with people like you and me, in the sense that we read books. You have a great list actually in the back of this of all the books that have influenced you that you are recommending right now. But most people are getting most of their information, for better or for worse, from much easier mediums, but also much more telegenic, charismatic mediums. And so I've had to sort of get out of my comfort zone, in the sense of like, if I want to reach those people and I ultimately want them to come back to the books, I have to figure out how to communicate in that language also.
That's fascinating, because for me, Soul Boom was such a labor of love. It took me the entirety of COVID, 3.5 years of working on it. It's a pretty, some people are like, oh, it's such a light, easy read. And some people are like, oh, it's such a heavy read. And, I don't know what it is. It's about 300 pages. I tried to make it as accessible as possible, funny with some jokes and levity and kind of really accessible metaphors and examples of what I'm talking about. But I really did this was for me, if I get hit by a bus tomorrow, and in case anyone ever, and that's probably 36 people, want to know what the guy who played Dwight thought about life and God and the soul and the meaning and in service and love, it's all here in the book. But now it's funny you mentioned this because, and you know what this is like too. I did this book tour and a lot of TV shows and podcasts and readings and stuff, and I'm still doing some. And you work so hard to sell a relatively small amount of books,
Yes. Yes.
Considering if I go do a TV show, anywhere from 3 to 10 million people are going to be just watching it like that. Even if I put up a video on my social media, I'm going to get hundreds of thousands of views just like that. So I agree with you. I love books. I wish books were the main way that ideas were traded. And in some ways they are. There are people, Malcolm Gladwell, Adam Grant, Arthur Brooks, David Brooks. There are some people that are influencing, and yourself, that are influencing the public dialogue about things in some really interesting way. I mean, it's really amazing. The Creative Circle book by Rick Rubben has been this
so good
runaway bestseller, and it's a really out there kind of book in a lot of ways, and that's really exciting. But I'm rambling, but I do want to come back to what you started with, which is I'm in this conversation right now of we've built out a little Soul Boom Instagram page, and it's it's only got 30,000 followers right now, but we could build it out. And I want to reach people with the ideas of this book, and I want to reach people that aren't necessarily going to go buy a book, but that are interested in spiritual tools to make themselves better and to make the world better. So how?
Anyone who's ever searched for themselves online has been shocked at the amount of personal data that's available about you out there. If that grosses you out and you don't like it, that's where today's sponsor, Aura, comes in. With Aura, you can pinpoint the data brokers that are revealing your information and conveniently submit opt-out requests on your behalf. And these brokers are legally obligated to remove your data when they're asked, but they make that process super difficult for a reason, and you can let Aura take care of that for you. Setting up Aura is super easy, and it eliminates the need to download a bunch of different apps like parental controls or antivirus, a VPN, password management, identity theft insurance, and more. You get everything you need at an affordable price. Allow Aura to safeguard your online presence and your data so you can focus on your other responsibilities and have some real peace of mind. You can either let people continue to exploit and profit off your private information, or you can let Aura put a stop to it by going to aura.com/dailystoic today for a 2-week free trial, and I'll link to it below in today's episode. It's funny you bring up Rick Rubin. That's a good example, right? Here's a guy who, through his music, probably 100 million albums, billions and billions of streams and radio listens. And that book is a hit. But when we're talking about what a hit book is, if that book sells 1 million copies over the next several years, it would be an enormous hit. You're talking about, even if you get into the 0.001% of book sales, you're talking hundreds of thousands of people. Yeah. And how many of them are actually reading it? Whereas, you post a video and you can do that many views in an hour. And so there is this tension between really spending the time and doing the work that makes a great book, but also understanding if it's just if the ideas are just trapped between these two covers, you're probably reaching only a fraction of the people that you want to reach with your ideas.
Right. And like you say, when you sell the books too, what percentage of people are reading the book and finishing the book and then really engaging with the ideas in the book? So that's going to be a kind of, 10, 20%, 30% of the buyers. So
yeah, these are small numbers, and then it's funny when you like history or philosophy, you read about these ancient philosophers, and they were like rock stars, they were like huge deals in their own time, and you're like, where did that go? Nobody's got that kind of reach anymore. Even your Malcolm Gladwell's.
Right, indeed, but you've been very successful at it. There are people that do a great job. I'm just learning. I mean, I had this company, Soul Pancake, that did a lot of inspiring and uplifting content. And I really tried to stay out of it in a way. Like, I founded it and the idea was mine, and I was a catalyst behind and the funder behind a lot of it. But at the same time, I didn't want it to be the Rainn Wilson show. So it was really about a channel that had inspiring, uplifting content for young people that would bring people together and get them talking about humanity's biggest questions. So that chapter came and went. Now it's the Soul Boom chapter, not the Soul Pancake chapter. And I'm trying to figure that out.
What was the reaction like? Like, I remember when I went to my publisher, I'd written these sort of marketing books, and I was like, hey, for my next book, I want to write about an obscure school of ancient philosophy. They were not like super excited, to say the least. Like, they did not see the dollar signs necessarily. My agent went to Harvard Divinity School and ultimately actually did some of the translations, or all the translations, in the Daily Stoic. So he was very supportive. He was able to sort of put his agent hat aside. But I have to imagine, given where you were when you sort of started talking about some of these stuff, that maybe not everyone on your team was hoping that's the direction you would go in.
Well, it's funny. I have this book agent, Richard Abate, who's kind of legendary in Hollywood. And he did, I don't know, Tina Fey and Mindy Kaling, BJ Novak, but also a bazillion other, celebrities, and
he does all the comedians
and celebrities and whatnot.
Yeah.
And I was calling him and like, I want to do a book just on these spiritual ideas, and I don't know how. And, is people going to read this? Are we going to be able to sell it? And believe it or not, he was the guy from the get-go who was like, you should absolutely do this. 100% you should do it. It's important. You have things to share. You have something to say. A lot of people know you from doing Oprah and doing Soul Pancake and talking about mental health. And so he was actually really encouraging. But it was a funny journey because I wrote the introductory chapter. I wrote an outline. I wrote an impassioned letter about why I wanted to write this book. And we sent it out, and it was just promptly rejected by basically every single publisher except one, which was Hachette, which is the one I ended up going with, and they got it. It's one of these really beautiful things where I get what you're trying to do, and we're behind this. They really believed in it from the get-go, and we have been very encouraging and want to do more. And it's been great. And, I've at least made their money back. So I feel, okay.
Sure.
So
my editor told me many years later that they were hoping I would just get it out of my system, and then I would go back. They were saying yes. It was sort of a, which I'm sure more in the Hollywood sense is more common. It was a one for me, one for you kind of a deal.
Right.
And they were hoping that it would, not that it would crash and burn, but that it just would force me to go back to the other stuff. And then the exact opposite happened, which they're obviously quite pleased with, as am I.
Well, it's great. You really launched a movement, and I'll be really blunt. Like, I don't know much about Stoicism at all. I mean, I've heard some of your podcasts. I've heard some of your short videos. I've read a little bit of, Aurelius and, Seneca, but, mostly through some like quotes and articles about them. I haven't gone to the source and whatnot, but what I do know is like, wow, this is like, it's kind of reminds me of like cognitive behavioral therapy. It's kind of like, this is a philosophy that it's where the rubber meets the road. You can put this into effect today, and you can see improvements if you just have the kind of like discipline and follow through. I think there's a crisis in young men today, and there's a mental health crisis in young people, and you can talk about that in really broad terms, but you can also talk about this crisis in young men in terms of finding their way in this really chaotic world. We see more and more a lot of young men really embracing kind of authoritarianism and
sort of right-wing grifters.
Yeah. Some right-wing grifters that are really good at, under the auspices of kind of philosophy and purpose are misleading a lot of young people in some really dangerous directions. They're not taking them toward love. They're not taking them toward connection.
Yeah, don't you think what they're kind of doing is looking at the same sort of Viktor Frankl calls it the existential vacuum, or you could call it the sort of spiritual emptiness that you're talking about in your book that I think the Stoics were also speaking to. They're sort of seeing that, and instead of leading people towards a place that the Stoics would call virtue or enlightenment or whatever you want to call it, they're sort of taking that emptiness, taking some of the mystique or the weight of the Western texts or the philosophical traditions, the sort of mystical ideas also. And then, I can't exactly describe what the philosophy they're selling is, but it does seem to be totally devoid of like compassion or empathy or love or obligation to anyone other than yourself and your own self-development.
Yeah, and I think it's also a lot of what's going on, in the political discourse is kind of a reactivity to the other side. So what's happening on those conversations that veer a little more towards the political right tend to be a little more conspiratorial, and they're very emotionally reactive to the extremes of the left. And that is catalyzing community that is catalyzed only around its distaste for some stuff coming from the political left that is egregious. But there aren't any solutions there. I have a section in my book called don't just protest, build something. And protest, by the way, comes from both sides, right and left, right? So It's really easy on the political left to just be like, oh, there's injustice. Oh, no, that's terrible injustice. Oh, look, there's another injustice. Oh, my God, there's terrible injustice. And then on the right, it's like, oh, can you believe what this lefty said? Oh, that's terrible. Can you believe what that person said? Oh, that's terrible. Can you believe what AOC said? Oh, that's terrible. So there's all this reactive protest. But how do you build a life proactively? And how do you build a life in community with others? Because that's the other thing that's really missing, is that we are in, like it or not, we're in community. We're in consultation. We're in connection. We're in cooperation. And we need to live even more as we're headed towards, 9, 10, 11 billion people on the planet, towards even more connectivity, connection, community, and cooperation. What does that take? It takes humility. It takes empathy, like you say, compassion. But you have to have a proactive stance. You have to, like I say, don't just protest, build something. You have to be a part of building something good and noble and true and connective and enlightened and seeking transcendence and in service to others, as all of the great spiritual leaders and the great thinkers and philosophers and teachers have taught us, eon after eon. And that's what I love about what you are doing with the philosophy, is like, how can I apply this to my life to make my life better? And this is what I'm doing in Soul Boom. And let me just say, I'm throwing out a lot of different topics here, but let me just say that spirituality sounds woo-woo. So that's the word woo-woo, right? And it can be woo-woo. If it's woo-woo, jettison it. Spiritual tools and thinking about spirituality and using spiritual faith-based wisdom from throughout the centuries of all the world's faith traditions has to make your life better, and it has to make the world better. Otherwise, discard it. And there might be a lot of listeners right now. It's like, well, it doesn't work, so I am discarding it. F you. It's stupid, and I get that. And religion and faith has certainly been the cause of some of the worst crimes against humanity done in the name of love and done in the name of God. But okay, great. Let's put that aside. Like I say in the book, have we jettisoned the spiritual baby with the religious bathwater? We threw out the religious bathwater. Did we get rid of some spiritual truth in there? And in Hinduism and in Buddhism, I'm a member of the Bahai Faith. In Christianity and Islam, in Zoroastrianism, Sikhism, all the world's great faith traditions. What can we find that, when the rubber meets the road, makes our lives better? And part two, makes our world better, makes our communities better, makes our nation better, makes the way we come together better, because I passionately and firmly believe that there are spiritual solutions to the world's problems.
It's interesting talking about Stoicism. Like, I can tell the stuff that is going to be the most popular is going to be your sort of most straight down the middle, sort of the stuff about discipline, the stuff about courage, the stuff about wisdom, your sort of standard self-improvement message from the ancients, right? Which the Stoics talk a ton about, right? Marcus Aurelius writes this book, Meditations, which are notes to himself to be better at his job and his life. And there's a ton of great stuff in there from this productive, strong, powerful, brilliant individual. But I can also tell, I also know that Stoicism is more than just, the sort of life hacks, right? Like, it wasn't this recipe for making you a better sociopath, like for being less caring, less interested, in other people, more selfish, more successful. It was more than that. And so, one of the key Stoic virtues of the four, it's courage, self-discipline, justice, and wisdom. And justice, to me, is the bucket in which a lot of the stuff you were just mentioning there falls into. The idea of community, the idea of connection, the idea of doing the right thing, the idea of trying to make the world better. And I can just tell, like, the second I head into that territory, it's not just that I'm, losing some people, but I'm making some people very, very angry. And that is an interesting part of the sort of community that's out there right now. The people who, like you said, it's not just that they're a little skeptical, but they're almost reactive against, because, maybe with the left, there these ideas of compassion and empathy and fairness and equality and, because the left is associated with some of those things, even politeness, it's almost as if a good percentage of society has embraced being the opposite of those things, as if that's a meaningful, like, way to live or be. It's very strange.
Yeah, I was thinking about that in terms of climate change, and it's so sad that that has become politicized as well. Because it's just science, and it's just common sense.
Right.
I mean, it's just like the political right views itself as being like common sense. Like, we're the common sense. You're the woo-woo, crazy, pie in the sky, utopian. You triggered my feelings, people. We're the
the facts don't care about your feelings.
Yeah, facts. And okay, well, here's a fact. Humanity has been for 200 years pouring CO2 into the atmosphere. CO2 is a heat-trapping gas. And there's a lot more of it in the atmosphere now than there was 200 or 300 years ago. And we're also talking about, couple thousand years of deforestation, filling in peat bogs, wetlands, converting those to farming. Like we've been
damming rivers, killing animals. Yeah.
So we've eating more and more meat and having more and more livestock, et cetera. So You just look at, thousands of years away, we have terraformed planet Earth, and it's a very, very different place than it was 1,000 or 2. So that's just common sense. You just drive by some smokestacks and look at all that, and just be in a traffic jam and like, oh, look, there's 12,000 cars I can see from my window, and all of them are. So it's just this common sense thing, like, yeah, and it's getting warmer and there's more extreme weather events, and even that has become politicized in a way that is really unfortunate. What would the Stoics say about climate change?
Ooh, that's interesting. Well, I think the Stoics would first say that nature is wonderful, like we said earlier, that this world is a temple, and to destroy it is to destroy something that's consecrated and very, very special. So I think first off, they would agree that preserving the environment is something worthwhile. I think they would say that we have an obligation to the common good, right? Marcus Aurelius references the common good something like 80 times in Meditations. So not like a couple times, but it's a central theme that like we sort of owe something to other people, even people that we don't meet. There's this beautiful image from one of the Stoics. His name is Hierocles. And he says that, every person is born selfish, right? You come out of the womb, sort of fighting for your own survival. And then you have your parents, you have your siblings, and that these are sort of concentric circles that surround the individual. Then you have people that live near you, you have people that live in the same country as you, people that live in the same continent. There's these series of circles that get bigger and bigger as you go, that ultimately, encompass all animals and nature itself, people who have never even been born. And he says that sort of the work of one's life, the work of philosophy, is about pulling these outer rings inward, right? So I do think there is an argument in Stoicism that says, yes, at first, as the individual, you have to go, what's in my control? What's not in my control? I'm going to focus on getting my shit together as a human being. But once you get your shit together as a human being, it behooves you to then think about how you fit in this larger picture, and are you making positive contributions or negative contributions, and how do you bring other people together so individually we're all making our own the contribution that that's possible for us to make, that collectively adds up in a big way. I don't know if Stoicism has a great answer for the collective action problem that is, something as large as climate change. But then again, most of the Stoics in the ancient world ran for public office, and I think they would be trying to tackle the pressing issues of their time. In their time, they were worried about being invaded by the barbarians. Thankfully, that's not the concern that we have here in modern day America, but we should be asking ourselves, if we don't do something about this, what kind of world are we leaving our children and grandchildren?
Isn't there an
I don't think it's a great one
of wisdom and reasonableness that would conform to kind of current scientific thinking?
I think so. And they were fascinated with natural questions. There were Stoics who measured the circumference of the earth and, charted the stars. Seneca wrote a multi-volume series on nature, like his sort of natural observations. So, these weren't like, when we think of philosophers in the ancient world, we tend to think of them as being like philosophers in the modern world, like these big-brained specialists that would, have
living
a job
in academia,
at Harvard.
Publishing dissertations and
about impossible questions, like one of which you talk about in the book. How do we know we're not living in a computer simulation or whatever, right? But in fact, they were regular people who had real jobs, and philosophy was designed to sort of help them live the good life, and also to help them to do good in a world where there was a lot of bad. So yeah, I think first and foremost, there's something fundamentally unphilosophical about looking at reality, looking at the overwhelming evidence and logic of a situation like the climate, and going, I'm just going to deny that exists. So I heard a powerful metaphor earlier. They're like, look, if you park your car in the garage and sit in it, you'll be dead in like 30 minutes, right?
Yeah.
And then they're like, we've been like the Earth is also a closed atmosphere. We've been running the car for 100+ years. That like the Earth is very big and the atmosphere is very big, but it's not unlimited. There's nowhere that it goes, right? It's trapped here, and it doesn't take a genius to deduce there's going to be some consequences from the decisions that we've made.
But the important thing here, and I talk about in my book why we need a spiritual revolution, and I think I don't know anything about your beliefs. I don't know if you're a theist or atheist, or I have no idea personally. I think there's a great deal of parallel between Stoic philosophy, certainly the idea of God and gods and reverence for nature and justice and a lot of spiritual ideas. And the Stoics considered themselves spiritual people at the time. They weren't kind of like, oh, we're these kind of atheists with this kind of like self-help little philosophy on the side where we do cold plunges at 6 a.m. That's not, but why we need a spiritual revolution, Ryan, and one of the points I bring up, and I think we're kind of referencing it here, is that partisanship, and I don't want to point fingers at either the political left or the political right. I guess I want to point fingers at both of them. Partisanship in itself is toxic, and it is unsustainable, because you have two sides that their entire goal is not public service. Their entire goal is the seeking of power. So we set this into motion hundreds of years ago. Even our founding fathers, and I put quotes in the book, I don't have them on the tip of my tongue right now. Our founding fathers were very, very afraid of the idea of like a two-party system. And we're seeing now, bloodshed done in the name of partisanship. And one can say, well, that's politics, and that's how politics have been for 2,000 years. But really, as long as we're not having a conversation that takes the stance of rising above the planet by 20,000 feet and looking down, if aliens are looking down at the United States specifically right now, they're like, oh my God, this is nuts. Half the country will do whatever the Republicans say is right and just give their allegiance almost like crazy to like a sports team, like they're Philadelphia Eagles fans or something like that.
Yeah.
And the other half of the country is diehard Democrats, and they'll do whatever crazy cockamamie things the Democrats are up to, and this party brand loyalty, and they're screaming in each other's faces. They're backstabbing each other. They're seeking power in the halls of power. Their policies are not for the good of the common, like you said, the common good, the common weal. Their policies are simply to try and get a few more votes. Everything is tested and polled, and in the meantime, they're raising tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars. There's ad spending on campaign ads, millions and millions of dollars, and this is the system we're in. And yet young people think, oh, if our party can just get into even more power, then things will change and they'll get better. Well, guess what? They're not. It is a toxic, unsustainable system. And that's what we need to be talking about. We need to be talking about a significant change of the system from the inside out. And that's again, one of the theses of my book. I hate the word theses. It sounds so dirty. One of the theses of my book is about this idea of a spiritual evolution. Like, we need to re-examine how our systems work from a spiritual lens, through a spiritual lens, and from a spiritual perspective, meaning with greater cooperation, compassion, pursuit of higher goals like justice. And we're not having that conversation. The conversation is just about Anthony Fauci, and it's about Trump, and it's about, fundraising, and it's about gerrymandering, and it's about, we're putting Band-Aids on a patient with cancer.
It is interesting. And the Stoics talk about, sort of zooming out, and they're like, look at these sort of ants fighting over this piece of food, or how instantly the sort of the boundaries or the borders of nations, continents sort of fall away. It all kind of comes together. You talk about the blue marble a little bit in your book too. Like when you see the world from space, it's very obvious that everyone's in the same boat, right? That there really aren't such things as separate people, separate identities. You
don't see borders.
Yeah, exactly. It all goes away, and then you zoom back in, and everyone's sort of very concerned about what's happening here or there. It's better, different, and the sort of the smallness of the view that we take on things. Even to go to your point about partisanship, I think that the real problem with partisanship is it's a way to turn off your brain, right? You go, what does my party think? I'll do that. Or the worst part is, what does the other party think? I need to find out why I think the opposite of that, right? We saw this, of course, during the pandemic. Some people are taking the pandemic seriously, so I'm going to find a way or a line of thinking at every step of the way that makes me not have to give a shit, or that makes me not have to do an uncomfortable or costly thing. I find it so interesting when you just go, oh, what's the conventional view here? What are the people that I don't like? What do they think about it? Now I'm going to find a way to not do that. And I think that's really the sort of the reaction of so many of the sort of clearly big issues of our time, whether it's, we're talking about fairness or, income inequality, we're talking about the climate, we're talking about, any of these issues. There's this sense that, oh, the other side is holier than thou. The other side thinks they're better than me. The other side is soft. So I'm going to think the opposite of those things, which really puts you in a, quite a bad position, because you're now thinking the opposite of caring about other people, caring about the environment. You're thinking the opposite of facts because you just don't want to give somebody else the satisfaction of being right or of telling you what to do.
Yeah, amen. But we're just not having that conversation. No one's having that conversation. They're just either talking about how messed up the political left is or how messed up the political right is. And no one's saying, hey, wait a minute. What about the system that has created the political left and political right? How do we change that system? So, the one example I gave in the book is from my religion, the Bahai Faith, which I think has a really, I believe in it. So I'm a person of faith, and this is what I believe in. And I'm an adherent. I'm a follower. I'm a devotee. I love the word devotee because it comes from devotion. But putting that aside, there's a really interesting thing about the Bahai Faith, which is that there is no clergy in it. And I'm not proselytizing, I promise. I just want to make a point about politics. There's no clergy in the Bahai Faith. So it's a democratically elected religion. So every town, if you're in Austin, Texas, every year the Baha'is of Austin, Texas get together and they elect 9 people to be in charge of the Baha'is of Austin, Texas. There's no campaigning. There's no yard signs. There's no money spent. It's quiet contemplation of who are the 9 wisest people that can best serve the needs of the community. This happens on a national level, and it happens on a global level as well. And when you go to a Baha'i election night, it's a holy act, right? It's a democratic and sacred activity. There's prayer and meditation. No one's talking. People are silently putting their silent ballots in the box. They're counted, and that's that. And when someone is elected to the Austin, Texas Baha'i Spiritual Assembly, they don't have any power over anyone else. They don't have any say, or this is how we should interpret this, or they're just collectively making decisions that are best for the community. So I was thinking about this in terms of, could you have a small town? I use Pancake Flats, Colorado, that is so tired of partisanship, of the bickering, the backstabbing, the yelling, the red faces, the veins bulging in the necks, the angry tweets. They're so angry at the millions and millions of dollars being raised to spend on those ads that are like, you think Mark McCampbell is a good guy? He's a piece of shit. Look what he did. Conk, conk, conk. And guess what? Those ads have been found to work. They're preposterous. And people like, oh, he must be a piece of shit. I'm not voting for him. So could the good people of Pancake Flats come together and meet at the local football stadium and say, enough of this. Let's just get a group of people that really want to make the town better. And let's do a silent ballot and have an election. And those people that are on the town council, they don't have any power over anyone else. They only have power when they meet as a town council. Like, you can kind of picture that happening. It's still democracy, right? And you've taken, now, could it be flawed? Could someone be, backstabbing others and seeking power and blah, blah? Of course, it's not watertight necessarily. But when you take money out of the equation and you take toxicity out of the equation, maybe there's a better system to be found, but we're not talking about systems.
It is interesting how sort of timeless this debate is too. Like in ancient Greece and then in Rome, the sort of two big rival philosophical schools are the Epicureans and the Stoics. And the Epicureans, although they're not the sort of hedonists that word comes to mean to us today, their sort of idea is, look, the world is corrupt and broken. Things are messed up. People are way too caught up in things that don't matter. They say, sort of retreat to the garden and kind of tarry here, right? Stranger, you would do well to tarry here. And it's in this sort of garden that they pursue their sort of individual or their small group, pursuit of philosophy of enlightenment. And the Stoics are saying sort of that's all well and good, but actually also you have to be politically engaged, right? The joke from the Stoics was, the Epicureans say don't get involved in politics unless you have to, and the Stoics say get involved in politics unless something prevents you, right? They're not talking about partisanship, but they are talking about like playing an active role in the world. And I do think one of the problems with our society is, the good people go, that game is dirty, the system is messed up, it's unfair, it's hopeless. And so they kind of retreat inwards and they see the field, they see the political levers of power, the political narrative, the discussion to like the worst people, right? So the problem is, most people don't want to be elected to town council. They're busy. Most people don't even vote in their local elections, sure. Right? The little town that I live in here, right outside Austin, is called Bastrop. One of our city council elections was recently decided by 2 fucking votes. 2 votes.
Wow.
I think there was maybe 5,000 or 6,000 eligible voters in the city election. There's more in the county, but it's like 600 people voted, And so there is this kind of, I think, a problem both philosophically and spiritually, which is like the people that you would want, the people with the best hearts that you would want to be most involved in the conversation and in the decisions have sort of disengaged from the process the most. And I wonder how much that contributes to the problems that we have today.
Sure. Who could blame them? I mean, you can make a lot more money, being an entrepreneur than you can working in politics. Politics don't kind of draw the best and the brightest. And we've lost as a nation. We could say we've lost as a species, but I'll just stick with nation. We've lost as a nation this idea of the common good, right?
Yeah.
And service toward the common good and sacrifice toward the common good. And so many young people are so disgusted with politics, don't want anything to do with it. They don't vote. And who could blame them? So But again, I think
if you're 20 years old and you look at what's happened in the last 20 years, you're like, of course you don't believe in capitalism. You don't believe in the democratic system. You don't believe in anything. You have watched your parents and your grandparents betray you and the values that they purport to believe at pretty much every turn, at every opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yeah. So, I'm hoping to, start a conversation. It's a conversation that you've had ongoing. But like you said, you going back to something that you said earlier on, you're like, I know what people will respond to, right? So anything about like making yourself self-determination through courage, is going to get a lot of clicks, a lot of reads, a lot of, and the parallel I have in my book is two TV shows from the 1970s. So I talk about Kung Fu and Star Trek, and I talk about how Kung Fu, for those who don't know, is about Kwai Chang Caine. He's a former Shaolin monk. He comes to the United States. This all takes place in the 19th century. So he's in the United States in the cowboy days, and he's taking all of his martial arts skills, but all his wisdom skills as well, and what he's learned from his Taoist, Confucianist wisdom, Buddhist wisdom in the monastery, and trying to kind of apply that in his daily life, even though he's coming up against aggressive, racist, mean cowboys at every turn, and occasionally he has to kick their asses, which is very satisfying. And that was the whole show. I loved that show when I was a kid. I watched it over and over again. And the other show that I watched was Star Trek. And I draw the parallel of Star Trek as being also a different kind of spiritual journey. So if the Kung Fu is your personal spiritual journey, I want to make myself better. I want to find peace and tranquility and vision and mission in my life and stand up for my morals and my integrity. So I'm going to go do that, as I navigate my life. And you don't have to be a Shaolin monk. You can be a housewife or a school teacher or a truck driver or whoever you are. And then Star Trek is humanity's journey forward. So humanity is in the world of Star Trek, humanity has figured out all of its big issues: income inequality. It has conquered injustice. It is at peace with nature. It has found, clean burning fuel sources. Technology has carried humanity forward, and we're at peace. There's no more war. We're a federation, like you said, that big blue marble photograph. When you look down on planet Earth, it's humans. It's with a rich diversity. You go to the deck of Star Trek, and there's Asian guy and a Russian guy and a black woman, and the first interracial kiss in television history took place on Star Trek, and that's humanity rising to its greatest mission, which is to join the other aliens of the galaxy and seek out new life and new strange civilizations and boldly go and no one has gone before. And that's humanity's journey. So there are these twin spiritual journeys that we're all on. I would call them spiritual. You might call them philosophical. I believe that we have souls, that we are souls, that we are a short time on the planet in our fleshy meat suits, and after 80 or 90 years, our journey continues. So that's why I kind of talk about it in terms of spiritual terms. But these are the twin paths that we're on, and I think where our conversation keeps nudging toward is this more of the Star Trek journey. I know for myself when I speak about like mental health and like, oh, here's a meditation practice you can put in, or here's a way you can use gratitude to kind of make your life better on a daily basis. People really go for that. They love that. They're excited about that. And I get it, and because there are tools, practical tools that can make your life better. And people want to make their lives better. They want to feel happier. They don't want to feel bummed out all the time. I get it. Not even bummed out all the time, overwhelmed by anxiety and depression and self-hatred. And, they don't want to feel lost. So I get that. But I also hope that we can talk about, I guess, spiritual and philosophical tools to help us transform society, because you can't do one without the other. Do you know what I mean? We're in this really toxic, we're a bunch of frogs in a really toxic pond, and you can kind of like work on yourself in your little corner of your little lily pad on your pond. But as long as like there's war and dissension and disunity and, across the pond. I don't know why I went to this analogy. Why did I go to this metaphor? It's not sustainable. It's a terrible metaphor. But if we have to also clean up the toxic pond at the same time and address it.
Totally.
So they feed each other. The more that we work on our own personal, spiritual, and philosophical selves, finding meaning and hope and vision, then we can bring that to the world. And the more we are of service in the world toward the quote unquote common good, then that feeds our soul even more, and it makes us even more kind of wise and arrived. What do you think? You mentioned
the word depression. I do have to ask, isn't that just another word for feeling bummed out?
I'm not sure where you're going here. No.
Oh, it's one of my favorite lines from The Office. I'm sorry.
Oh, wow. You quoted The Office in my face. Oh my God. Was that a Michael Scott line?
It's where he's about to jump off the building to prove the point.
Yeah.
I think it's your line, to be honest. I think you say maybe. I think you might say it. I don't remember. I'm sorry.
That's awesome. I love it.
I
was like, I saw a glint in your eyes. I was like, where is he going with this? Or is he making a comment about? Yeah. Anyways, brilliant. I love it.
No. I think it's interesting, right? Because I get this from both sides. So on the one hand, like. People who are academic philosophers, or people who are much smarter than me and much more classically trained in philosophy, they'll get upset about what I write about Stoicism, because they'll say, "Oh, this is life hack philosophy, or this is life hack Stoicism." That he's sort of just distilling it down into self-improvement principles. Then it's funny, the people who are just interested in self-improvement principles get really mad when you veer off into the nitty gritty of the philosophy as in the sense of what it actually obligates you to do, the sort of ethical obligations that come along with it. But I actually do think both are really important. And I think you did a TED talk on this. It is really cool and empowering when people learn for the first time that, hey, these people who lived a long time ago, whether they're Eastern philosophers or Western philosophers, monks or thinkers or scientists, they or psychologists, they have come up with really cool tricks, exercises, spiritual exercises, ways of thinking that can radically improve your life. And given the fact that the vast majority of people don't think there's anything usable or applicable for them in philosophy, that can be such a powerful way into spirituality or philosophy. The idea that, hey, if you do this thing, it will make your life better. You'll be happier. You'll be less stressed out. You'll get along with people better. You'll lose your temper less. I think there's a lot of value in those sort of little self-improvement tricks and tips.
Yeah. And it's funny. I've been thinking about, like, so, my publisher's been asking what's the next book, and you talk about hacks, and you're right. I did a talk on spiritual life hacks, because again, if spirituality is just church, like, oh, I feel good when I go to church and I'm singing and the pastor gives an inspiring sermon, and then I go about my day and my week and it doesn't affect me at all, it doesn't make my life better, doesn't influence me for the better, then that's bullshit. And from the same token, if it's all just woo-woo, kind of new agey kind of feeling, crystals and incense and spirit worlds and stuff like that, and it doesn't make your life better when you're going to work and you're driving your truck and you're dealing with your kids and then that's bullshit too. So, but I know that there are spiritual tools from the world's great faith traditions that can make people's lives better, that can certainly address the current mental health crisis as well. One of them, and I think you talk about this too, and the Stoics talk about it a lot, is suffering. And what is your tattoo again? Your tattoo is like the obstacle, right?
The obstacle is the way.
So there's suffering, obstacles, tests, and difficulties have been talked about from the dawn of time in both religious circles, spiritual circles, and in philosophical circles. Why is life so damn hard? Why isn't it easy? Why is it hard? Why is there conflict? Why do we not always get what we want? I think the Stoics really were the original inventors of the serenity prayer. God grant me this serenity to accept the fact, the things that I cannot change, and the courage to change the things I can. What is in our control and what is not in our control. And there's this daily battle in ourselves, like, why can't I get cast in this lead role in this film? Gosh darn it. That's not in my control. Well, what is in my control? Well, I can write a film where I play a lead role in it, and I can, with determination and courage and fortitude and follow through, try and get funding for it and make that happen, right? So I'm just using an example like from my own life or career, let's say. So there are these tools like dealing with suffering, dealing and overcoming adversity that Lord Krishna was talking about, 3,000 years ago, 3,500 years ago, that, is in the Talmud, that is in the Bhagavad Gita, that is certainly in the writings of the Buddha, that can help make our lives better. And when you get a spiritual conception of like, we are souls, we are spiritual beings having a human experience, it can put everything into perspective about why there is suffering and what the purpose of that suffering is. And, what I always, when I talk to young people about, suffering, anxiety, depression, mental health stuff, because it's all linked, because I do think that a lot of young people today, and maybe you've noticed this, Rainn, although I think you're like 40, but you look like 20. I have no idea how old you are. I mean, I literally, if someone
36.
said Ryan Holiday is 23, I'd be like, yeah, that makes sense. If someone was like, he's 47, I'd be like, I could see that. So
36.
All right. Smack in the middle.
Right in the middle.
36 with a long baby face.
Yes.
But I do think that young people today have this kind of weirdly mistaken thing about difficulty and struggle, like it shouldn't exist. Like, why am I not getting what I want? I should be just getting what I want. And I'm not. And I'm so overwhelmed by that and pissed off about it. And you know what? Guess what, kiddies? We're struggling, and it works on a number of different levels. Animals struggle too. Turn on a nature show. Animals struggle, humans struggle. But there are ways to overcome the struggling, to have an understanding of the struggling, to take meaning from it. To take meaning from it, exactly. And that's where I was going. Like when I talk to young people, like to say, hey, aren't you glad for some of the struggle that you've had in your life? Like what struggles, conflicts, and obstacles and suffering have we experienced that we're actually incredibly grateful for at the end of the day, because it has brought us wisdom and meaning. So that's just one example of drawing from the world's great faith and philosophical traditions to enrich our lives.
There's a Freud quote that I love. He says, in retrospect, the struggle will strike you as most beautiful. And I think that's largely true. In the moment, it's terrible and awful, and it doesn't change the fact that it wasn't your fault, that it wasn't fair, that it shouldn't have happened. But as you move on, as it is integrated into your life, as it ceases to be such a big part of it because you have additional experiences, because you make changes or you adjust or new opportunities come as a result of it, you look back on these moments that felt so devastating, a breakup, a bankruptcy, some scandal or controversy, some mistake that you made. You look back on it and you see how it got you to where you are now, which you are happy with, which you are proud of, which you find meaningful. And then it also strikes you how much in the moment you resisted the thing happening to you, how much you fought against it when you would have been better practicing, a thing that I think gets a knock unfairly in the Stoics, like when you would have been better practicing a little resignation or acceptance, embracing the suck or the unpleasantness of the situation and just allowing it to be integrated into your life and into your identity much more quickly.
That's I've told this story a few times before. Forgive me if anyone's heard it, but to me it really profoundly illustrates what we're talking about. And that is when I was a theater actor in New York, which I did for 10 years before I came to LA. And then it was another like 4 or 5 years before I got The Office. So I had been acting professionally for 15 years before I played Dwight. And I got cast in my first Broadway play. This was around 1995 or so. And I, 10 years before The Office. And I was so stressed out about it and overwhelmed. And I was like in my head about it. And in my head, I was like, oh my God, I could get a New York Times review and I could get a Tony nomination and I could get signed by the William Morris Agency. It was a huge opportunity for me. And I got very overwhelmed by it. And guess what? I sucked. The pressure, the tension, the perfectionism, just kind of rendered me really tense and not pleasant. And I just was really stuck in my head and lost. And when and I suffered so much. There's nothing worse than doing a play that you suck in, because you have to do it for 4 or 5 months and you're doing 8 shows a week. You just show up and you're like, fuck, I'm going to suck again. Damn it. And you just do it again and again. If you do a movie and it sucks, like you spent a month or 3 months on the movie and then it's not a good movie and like, all right, moving on.
And the audience isn't there in front of you.
The audience isn't there not laughing at jokes you're telling, or commenting
over and over and over
you're
again.
Trying to do. So, what's my point here? I really suffered a lot. I was talking to my wife was going to graduate school at the time. I was talking to her, sobbing on the phone in the middle of the night, not sleeping, really in bad shape. And when I finished the play, I said, never again am I going to do that. I'm going to find my authentic voice as an actor. I'm quirky. I'm kind of weird. I'm going to embrace that. I'm not going to be try to be something to please someone else. That's a Stoic thing too, right? So yes. I'm not going to jump through all these hoops to try and please other people, but I just need, I gotta be me, baby. And I fired my agents and I really just changed how I was as an actor at that point. I was just like, and not that I didn't have struggles after that, but I had different kinds of struggles. So the point is that I never would have gotten Dwight in The Office had I not gone through that suffering on that play on Broadway, because finding Dwight was embracing my nerdy weirdness. And if I hadn't totally embraced that, I never would have gotten the role of Dwight. I would have been I would have been like, I should be auditioning for Jim, or something. And so I'm so grateful for like the most miserable 6 months of my life. I'm so grateful because it opened so many doors.
One of my favorite metaphors from the Stoics is from Epictetus, who knew, I think, a bit about what it's like to get dealt a shitty role in life. I mean, he's born a slave in Rome. It's about as bad a hand as you can get. But he says, we're all actors in a play, right? We didn't write the script. We're not the director. We can't just trade roles with whomever we want. We have to figure out, basically, he's saying to just act the hell out of the lines we've been given, right? That's what life is. Now, thankfully, we live in a society today where people have a bit more agency. Rome was a very hierarchical, stratified place. Thankfully, there's not such a thing as, person being assigned the role of a slave necessarily. But I think that the general idea, it's probably one you relate to, that to be great as an actor, you have to accept fundamentally the powerlessness of your situation, in the sense that you don't control the material necessarily, you don't control the director, you don't control the marketing budget, you don't control when it comes out, you don't control if a strike intervenes or a pandemic happens and theaters are shut down. All you control is when they say action and you have a handful of lines to say, do you show up and do you do the best job you possibly can? And this idea of you made it sound a little bit like you felt like the life of an actor is not a relatable experience. But I do think fundamentally we all are actors in this play where we're not the main characters, no matter how much we would like to be. The material's not as good as we would like it to be. The role is a bit more constrictive than we would like it to be. But we have an opportunity to do a really great job in the handful of, minutes we're on stage or on camera, if we choose to step up and to be present for that.
Yeah, that's very well said. That's really beautiful. How do the Stoics address kind of suffering and adversity in terms of character building and finding meaning and purpose?
Well, the idea of the obstacle is the way it comes to us. Marcus Aurelius sort of jots this passage down in Meditations. He says, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. And basically what he means is that stuff happens, right? You have this plan and then that plan is blown apart, or you wanted things to be this way and now they're this way. That stuff happens to us in life, and that's outside of our control. But what is inside of our control is how we respond to what's happened. So the idea isn't that you can magically turn every shitty situation into a wonderful situation, but that even these shitty situations, the ones that involve suffering, are opportunities to practice philosophy or to practice virtue, that they're a chance to be patient, they're a chance to forgive, it's a chance to be courageous, it's a chance to be creative, that in the obstacles that life throws at you, one path might be blocked, but in blocking that path, it inherently opens up a different path. Might not be the one we want, might not be as good as the other one, but it is a chance to do that. I think Marcus Aurelius' life is a great example of this. I mean, this guy, he's the first and maybe only philosopher king, that ever got the shot, right? Like, the problem with leadership for 2,000-3,000 years has been the right people never get into power, right? And here you have a fundamentally decent person who's smart, who's trained. He has a 20-year apprenticeship under the previous emperor, his stepfather Antoninus Pius, and then it's his turn. He's finally the guy with the power. He has all these plans, and then there's a plague. There's a series of floods. Then there's an endless war. It's he never gets the chance to do any of the things that he wants. And so, on the one hand, it's this sort of missed opportunity in that, 20 years of peace and prosperity disappear right as they hand him the reins. And yet it's still an opportunity for all these other forms of greatness, patience, forgiveness, strength, moral leadership, not being corrupted by power. There's a coup, and Marcus Aurelius has to, respond to this coup without becoming a murderous dictator. And so I think the idea for the Stoics is like, you don't control when you're alive, you don't control most of what's happening while you're alive, but you control who you are, how you act in that role that you've been assigned. And that's where meaning and greatness and purpose really comes from.
That's cool. That's amazing. That's amazing. The Buddha, of course, taught, life is suffering. And I've talked about this in the book. The word is dukkha from the Sanskrit, Pali, and dukkha means kind of anxious discontent. So life is anxious discontent. We're never just satisfied with what we have. And
sure,
we're in that position because that's what's kept humanity alive throughout the eons. If we were just always satisfied, we would have died out by now. Oh no.
That's evolution.
What's that?
That's evolution, right? How can we have more offspring, be more successful? Yeah. Like that's the driving force of growth and change and survival.
And anxious discontent of like, do I have enough food stored up for winter? Oh no, I want more food. I need more. So this contemporary materialism of feeling like I'll be more sexually attractive, the more stuff I have, the nicer car that I have, that I'll be more liked if I have more stuff, that I'll have a higher status as more stuff. It comes from our base, the amygdala, the base part of our brain, right? And, oh no, this tiger's going to eat me. I hear a rustling in the branches outside of my cave. Oh no, that could be a bear that's going to eat my face. So there's a constant anxious discontent kept us alive, and we're wired for anxious discontent. So in a certain way, our work is to contradict the anxious discontent of being alive. For the Buddha and the Buddhists, all billion of them, it's hard to lump them all into one thing, but essentially, the second noble truth is that, that the suffering is optional, and it comes from desiring, from hankering, from craving.
Expectations.
Yes. And you can eliminate suffering by eliminating the craving, by, looking at that, if you're like, oh, I want more stuff and I want a nicer TV and I want a nicer car, and I'm so miserable because I don't have it, you can examine that in your life. And if you can release that, then you can release a lot of the suffering around that. And there's all kinds of tools to be able to do that. I mean, probably your listeners kind of know this. It's kind of Buddhism 101. But from a Bahai perspective too, so another level of suffering, and by the way, I'm not sure why we're spending an hour on this topic, but we just are. So, from the Bahai point of view, we are souls having a human experience, and we move on to other planes of existence in the divine realms, under the auspices of a all-knowing, all-loving creative force that I call in the book the notorious God. And the notorious God, as differentiated from a lot of contemporary ideas around God, as Sky Daddy. So it's not Sky Daddy.
Yes.
We're talking about the notorious God. So something altogether much greater and wilder and more encompassing than, a guy with a beard with an agenda. But the suffering and obstacles that we that hit us and we overcome, they grow our spiritual qualities and our spiritual virtues. I don't know how you would relate that, from a philosophical standpoint, but, kindness, humility, compassion, creativity, joy, love, honesty, all of these qualities of the divine from a Baha'i perspective, I'm not sure, from a Stoic perspective, that's just like our leadership qualities or character traits that we develop, but that we take these with us on our journey after our body falls away. So that suffering is there for a very good reason. It's to sharpen the knife. It's in the fire of adversity that the gold is purified, that the blade is sharpened in the fire of tests and adversity. And we take this with us as we move through our spiritual journey. And this is also in every kind of, to some degree or not, in every faith tradition.
It's certainly in Stoicism. Marx really says, he says, a strong stomach digests what it eats. He says, a fire takes anything you throw into it and turns it into flame and brightness and heat. And the idea is that that life is sort of testing us constantly, giving us raw materials constantly. And it's our job to kind of convert them into energy or fuel. We don't have to. We can be, sort of snuffed out by it, I guess, if we choose. But we can also choose to take, the experiences that we have and be made better, stronger, wiser, more compassionate, more experienced as a result of what we've gone through. That's
amazing. That's great. Do you have all these memorized, or do you have like a professor of Stoicism texting you these, like, here, Ryan? You know how Joe Rogan has the guy that like pulls up the clips on the
Jamie,
screen?
Pull this up, Jamie. No, what's actually been really cool about my study of Stoicism, and maybe you've experienced this in yours, I think it's more a testament to the power of journaling and philosophical work, which is the process of writing about Stoicism. Like the Daily Stoic, I wrote the book, The Daily Stoic, in 2015. It came out in 2016. But the month it came out, it was like August or October, I started the Daily Stoic, the website. And so I started with this daily email. So I've done the daily email now for almost 8 years. Wow. And then now also, we try to do a video every day, and I've had these conversations on a weekly basis. So the result is I've talked about the stuff so much in communicating them that they've sort of been inserted into my brain and my muscle memory. I'm not saying I'm perfect at applying them. I'm saying the exact opposite. I'm not, but I do have both a kind of a recall and then also kind of a deep connection with the ideas because I've gone over them so many times, which is actually the Stoic practice. Like you would say that for Eastern philosophy, sort of meditation is where it's at. That is the sort of philosophy practice. Well, for the Stoics, it was writing, and Marcus Aurelius's Meditations was not intended as a publishable philosophical work. That was his philosophical practice that happened to just not be destroyed. And it's pretty remarkable. I mean, some people go, oh, it's a little repetitive. It doesn't always make sense. It seems to revisit the same themes over and over again. And it's like, yeah, that's because it's not for you. It was for him. He was writing, that's what Meditations translates to himself in Greek. It's actually funny. He's a Roman writing in Greek because that's the language of philosophy in the ancient world. He's trying to practice it. And it's kind of come for me, this sort of repetitive practice of, I'm always thinking and talking about them. Again, that's not the same as being able to draw them out, in the big moments of my life. But I do feel like I've gotten better at it as time has gone on.
That's interesting. Are you familiar with The Artist's Way, Julia Cameron's work?
Yeah, of course. The morning pages.
Yeah. So that whole idea of morning pages is so similar in a way. And what it does too, so it all connects, right? So meditation connects to psychology, Freud and Jung, especially, and the idea of the subconscious. I've been doing a lot of hypnotherapy recently, which I find fascinating because it's essentially like when we go about our days, our consciousness is the tip of the iceberg. We think of our consciousness as everything, and we think of it as being just a brain activity. But our whole reality, and this is backed up with innumerable psychological testing, is our subconscious is like the rest of the iceberg that the Titanic ran into.
Yes.
And you can access the power of that subconscious in so many ways. Meditation is, in some ways, you could look at it just from a psychological lens, as a way to just tap into the resilience, wisdom, and serenity of your subconscious self. there's that wonderful aspect of meditation where you kind of separate from yourself, and as Michael Singer talks about in The Untethered Soul, you realize, oh, I am not my thoughts, and I'm not even my feelings.
Yeah.
And you have this whole,
that's mind-blowing.
You have this awareness of yourself. Oh, look, it's like yourself, looking at yourself from a 20,000 foot view. Oh my gosh, there's me. And look, I'm having thoughts and feelings, but I'm also witnessing myself having thoughts and feelings. So we are the witness. We are the witness. So what is that? What is that consciousness? You can access this in hypnosis and in hypnotherapy. I've found it really fascinating. And morning pages access that part of that creative flow part of yourself, that left brain part of yourself that doesn't play by the rules and can just kind of come up with like incredible stream. People do the morning pages and do her work, and they're like, oh my God, I'm an artist. You can be an accountant your whole life, and you're just writing stuff like, where did this come from? And that, going to Rick Rubin and the Creative Circle, and the origins of creativity and the muse, from ancient Greece, that this is coming from something other than me. I didn't write this. You hear that all the time. I didn't write this song. The melody just came to me. I didn't write this poem. It just came out. I didn't write this novel. Just it came out. I've literally had that experience many times while acting, where it's like, this isn't my conscious brain. There's something else guiding me. You can look at it as a muse. You can look at it as the Holy Spirit. You can look at it as the unconscious and accessing the unconscious. This is a very long-winded way of saying that journaling as a form of meditation is just as relevant as, sitting on the floor cross-legged for an hour. It's all about tapping into something deeper and more true than our very busy little calculator brains. And there is much more to the experience of being a human being than that.
Well, I think in meditation, you're sitting there and you're noticing these thoughts sort of coming in. The Buddhists talk about sort of like clouds. They're just sort of rolling in, and you can watch them. You realize you try to touch them. There's sort of not really anything to them. You're getting some distance from your thoughts. And then in journaling, you have a similar experience, which is, you're writing. And so you're physically creating distance. Like this thing was in your brain and now it's on the page. So you have even a foot and a half of distance allows you to see and think about your own thoughts with a little more objectivity. And then also there's this sense of like, whoa, where did that come from? That's not me. I don't agree with that. I don't like that. I don't have to do that. And so you're in both exercises, you're fundamentally getting a disconnect in a positive way from your own thoughts, or realizing that you have the power to say, just because I think it doesn't mean I have to be it, or doesn't mean I have to act on it, or doesn't mean I have to continue to carry it around. And I think that's why both those exercises are at the root of two very different, very distant philosophies that are kind of coming upon in their own way the same type of exercise or experience.
Yeah, and I think, we're talking about you and I coming maybe from two very different perspectives, but doing a similar kind of work, which is, hey, young people who might feel a little lost right now, overwhelmed or anxious, there's a lot of different tools out there. There's tools from
tried and true,
millennial. I don't mean millennials, but through the millennia. And some come from spiritual traditions and some come from philosophical traditions. Of course, they were all influenced by each other. It's that's one thing we don't really know, but like, so the Greeks who influenced the Stoics, they, how much were the Greeks, the ancient Greek philosophers, influenced by the Torah and the Talmud and the Jewish philosophers, and how much were the Jewish philosophers influenced by the Zoroastrian philosophers? Because when you look at some, anyways, it gets very esoteric, but some Greek ideas really seem to come directly from Zoroastrianism, because all of a sudden Zoroastrianism was all about like Ahura Mazda, and there's good and evil, and there's angel and devil, and there's light and darkness, and that's inside of us and it's outside of us. And people, if you give into the darkness, you go to a fiery kind of hell existence. Mm-hmm. And then the Greeks were talking about it. And it's interesting because Jesus and the Bible really wasn't talking about it. And the whole idea of like burning in hell as as some kind of kingdom that exists after our bodies die, with a presided by a devil, like that's a Zoroastrian idea that went to ancient Greece, that was put into practice in the Christian church about 300 years after the death of Jesus. He did talk about Gehenna. Anyways, it gets very esoteric, but it all influences itself. And I
it totally does. I mean, one of my favorite ones I like to point out to people is like, before he became known as Saint Paul, he was known as Paul of Tarsus.
Yeah, Saul of
which
Tarsus.
Which is was at the time the home of Stoic philosophy, where he almost certainly was introduced to those ideas, if not sort of deeply interested in them. And so it's all kind of in the water. It's like, who was the first person to take a rock and chip away at it and make it into something sharp? It's both something that was probably independently discovered, but also as soon as it was discovered, it spread around. And I think I have trouble making much of a distinction between any of the spiritual traditions, which you also make this point in the book, when they all kind of boil down at some level to the same fundamental truths about the human experience, because at the end of the day, they're all dealing with the same fundamental humans. It doesn't matter when you lived or where you lived. Like the fact that the vast majority of things are outside of our control, the fact that we have this anxious desire to achieve and do things and procreate, that we are mortal, that there's people who have different moral compasses than us, people that do bad things, and then we wonder, are they going to get what's coming to them? These are just fundamental parts of the human experience that all the philosophical and spiritual traditions are reckoning with at some level. So it shouldn't surprise us that they come to some shared conclusions.
And the point I really want to that I make in my book, and that I think you and I share this idea, is like the stakes are really fucking high. So this is not Rainn and Ryan having fun with philosophy and talking about these ideas that are kind of like, here's our little hobby, and there's these are like fun and interesting little quotes and stuff as some kind of academic game or something like that. Like, our world is on the verge of collapse. We can pretend it's not, but it really is. All the systems are breaking down: healthcare system, agriculture system, education system, you name it. Certainly the political system. This next election is going to be a doozy. But then we've got, war in Europe that we haven't seen since World War II. And we've got China arming the South China Seas. And we've got climate change. And we've got mental health epidemic that is affecting a good half of the young people today. And they're dying in droves. And suicide has become the number one cause of death for young people. So the stakes are high. This is not some academic exercise on the side. We need to put into practice these ideas, and especially fundamentally practical ideas that can help us serve one another, love one another, be compassionate to one another, build community at the grassroots with one another, and strive to make ourselves better people so that we can help others. Martin Luther King said, the most pressing issue is, what are we doing for others? The most pressing question is, what are we doing for other people? And so that's why I wrote soul boom. I really, now I need to, like you did, I need to kind of move. And actually, I'd love to get your information because I want to talk to you about your experience with the Daily Stoic newsletter and website, and now social media and video and podcasting and whatnot, because I just think these ideas they're life and death ideas. And this isn't about what's the best political candidate. This isn't about what's the best legislation. We'll figure that out and hopefully make good, solid, reasoned choices there. But it's much bigger and broader and more pertinent than that.
I think you're right that philosophy is fundamentally a matter of life and death, right? The Stoics called it the open door, but then later, in the 20th century, some of the existentialists are they basically just, to put it out there, they go, why shouldn't you just kill yourself, right? Like that's the stakes of philosophy, right? Philosophy is sort of asking yourself, doing the work, getting down to finding the meaning, the reasons to carry on, finding out how to cultivate a good life, because the alternative is why have a life at all, right? And so I think they are trying to fundamentally answer these really important questions. And I think I take heart in the fact that this is a 2, 3, 4,000-year-old struggle that, smart people have been thinking about this for a long time. They come to different conclusions, but they all are coming fundamentally to the conclusion that you should stick around. Life can be good. You can find meaning amidst suffering and, pain and frustration. But that it's not just going to be handed to you, and it's not necessarily obvious. And yeah, you talk about people dying deaths of despair. Despair is a killer. And if you don't have meaning and values and a sense of what it's all about and why, it's really hard to endure the blows of fate and fortune and just waking up every day in the 2020s.
You're exactly right. And I go back to that Kung Fu and Star Trek idea that, unless we work on the Kung Fu part of ourselves, our inner wisdom, our serenity, our vision, our morals and values. Yes, I said morals. That's right. Right and wrong. Believe it or not, there is right and wrong that exists. From the Platonist, it would be the forms, right? But I do believe that it exists beyond just what our civil society views as right and wrong. In Eastern Africa, genital mutilation of preteen girls is de rigueur and totally accepted. I don't think it's just my Americanness that kind of says, no, that's wrong. That's not just because I'm living in contemporary California. That's just wrong. It's just wrong. It's wrong.
Sure.
And
invading a sovereign nation because you want to colonize them is wrong. When Russia does it, it was wrong. When we did it, it's wrong.
It's just wrong. So I forget where I was going with all this, but we work on the Kung Fu part of ourselves so that we can make the world better. And that's where I think, again, so much of the spiritual and philosophical discussion falls short of, we make ourselves wiser so that we can work on justice from a Stoic perspective.
Yes.
From a spiritual perspective.
All the virtues are related.
Yes. From the spiritual perspective, we make ourselves, we seek to become compassionate, wise, and serene so that we can serve others, so that we can make the world a better place and spread the light wherever we go.
That's beautiful. Marcus Aurelius says, that which does not transmit light creates its own darkness, which I don't know exactly what that means from a scientific perspective, but I have always thought that at some level means like you have to sort of be what you want to see in the world. You have to sort of take what's good and reflect it outwards. And if you're negative, if you have bad values, if you see, only what's wrong in the world, that also kind of becomes its own thing.
Mike Tyson said, that which does not kill you makes you stronger. Michael Scott said, you miss 100% of the shots, the goals you don't make. And Wayne Gretzky also said that.
Yes. Michael Scott quoting Wayne Gretzky.
Thank you.
I wanted to ask you about that, actually. We talked about sort of anxious discontent, desire, and then we talked about sort of expectation. What is it? I imagine you wanted this thing for a long time. You wanted to be successful. You wanted to be famous. You wanted to do great work. You wanted to break out, and that happens. What does it actually feel like to get there? Was it a delivery of a delivery on all your hopes and dreams and expectations, or was there a little bit of a letdown?
Yeah, it's interesting because this became front page news a week or two ago because I think Bill Maher's podcast, and I was talking about this idea of suffering and, the human struggle for happiness, finding happiness. And I mentioned, I spent a great deal of time on The Office, really unhappy. And of course, it was misquoted and taken out of context. And it said, Rainn Wilson, miserable on the set of The Office. Rainn Wilson spent the entire office unhappy. You can Google it. It's incredible how the media works. Headline after headline after headline, making it seem like I'm this ungrateful, miserable fuck. And the fact is that no matter how well things are going for us as human beings, we have a tendency towards anxious discontent. And my dukkha, my suffering, my anxious discontent on the set of The Office was, I wanted to be a bigger movie star. I had a crack at doing a bunch of movies. They didn't turn out very good and people didn't really watch them. Or actually, some of them, they are pretty damn good, but people didn't watch them and they didn't work at the box office. And okay, that's fine. But at the time, I was just pulling my hair out damn it, I want this movie deal. And why can't I have this? And why can't I have that? And how come he's getting offered this and I'm not? And, envy and pettiness and, self-seeking. And, again, I'm so grateful for that test because I look back on it now. I'm like, you dipshit. You were
you had it all.
You had it all. It was the greatest job ever. Why couldn't you have just enjoyed it more? And I wasn't a spring chicken. I was, I got cast in The Office. I was 38, I think, when I started playing Dwight, so well into my 40s. And I was, by this last several years, I was in a much better place. It was kind of earlier on, year 3, 4, 5, right in that area of The Office. And, but yeah, it was beautiful. It was a great group of people and a beautiful job and nice pay. And we got along great. And I was playing one of the great TV characters of all time. And, lots of doors were open to me and getting invited to festivals and hotels and this and that and the other thing. And, just enjoy it. Getting nominated for Emmys, revel in it. It doesn't get better than this. Yeah. It really doesn't. You're a TV star, but you need to be a movie star.
We want more. We're never satisfied.
Never satisfied. What did the Stoics say about that, Mr. Smarty
They said
Pants?
they said that exact thing. They said, I think Seneca's line was, and I don't think he's being glib here. Obviously, real poverty exists, but he said poverty isn't having too little; it's wanting more. I think he wasn't speaking of the people who are actually impoverished. He was looking around at the other rich, powerful, famous people in Rome, of which he was one, and he saw how poor all of them were because they were comparing themselves to the people who had more, or they wanted everything. They weren't content with having a lot. They needed, the world was not enough. And I think that's what we do to ourselves. I think about this all the time. I go, my dream was to write one book. That I thought if I could write a book, that's what I wanted to do more than anything. And so, I am well beyond playing with house money at this point. I want to keep doing good and I want to keep doing more because I get enjoyment and satisfaction and meaning. And I think it helps people. But I do try to remind myself, like, if it sucks while I'm doing it, like what is that about? What a fundamentally dumb way to do it. If doing it is torture, I don't have to do it anymore. I've already won. Like, why not just have fun while I'm doing it? And by the way, that does seem to actually create better work.
Yes, having fun while doing it and enjoying.
Yeah.
It's the Bhagavad Gita says you are not entitled to
the fruits of the labor.
You are entitled to the labor, but not to the fruits of the labor. Right.
So good.
And wow, I love that you outquoted me. I love it.
I know the Gita. It's amazing. Of course.
So I'm going to read from the second greatest book next to the Bhagavad Gita and next to the Daily Stoic.
Soul Boom.
Because I just want to read this one thing. I say we end up with a culture that mirrors the famous quote by John D. Rockefeller, who, when asked by a reporter how much money is enough, responded, "Just a little more." And that's how we live. How much is enough?
Yes.
Just a little more. Oh, if I just get a little more, then I'll be happy. How much is enough? Yeah. And can I make a little bit more? That pretty much sums it up. To quote the esteemed philosopher David Lee Roth, money can't buy happiness, but it can buy a yacht that sails right next to it.
Maybe. I don't know. I'm watching Succession right now. They didn't seem too happy. They were on a nice boat.
I don't know. This is going to blow people's minds, but I don't know a lot of happy people in Hollywood. And I've met a lot of multi-millionaires and billionaires and not terribly happy. There's not an inverse. What is it? No, there's not a correlation between money and happiness. That's not to say that I don't really enjoy the fact that I don't have to worry about how I'm going to pay my rent, because I did spend years and years and years and years in that situation, and it sucks. And if you're thinking about that, it's really hard to have these conversations. If you're like, shit, how am I going to keep my lights on? How am I going to keep my cell phone? How am I going to keep my car insurance? So I want to be sensitive to that, but it is absolutely true that this is an essential part of the human condition that we need to address no matter what strata we're at.
That's something that was very, very helpful to me. I too, because my work has sort of had some unique fans. I've met very successful athletes or business people or billionaires or whatever. And, you go, oh man, they must have like the life. It must be so cool. I remember this one guy, he was like, oh, come meet me in New York for lunch. And he, met me. He was like, gave me this address. The address is his yacht on Chelsea Piers, and takes me in his yacht around the Statue of Liberty and back. And you're like, imagine how cool it would be to be that successful. And then invariably, every one of the conversations I have with these people, it at some point comes down to they want to write a book. And they want to ask my advice about it. And I go, they have everything in the world. They have all the money in the world. And what do they want to do? They want to do the thing that I get to do. So it comes back to the idea of, I better appreciate and be grateful for the fact that I get to do it, right? That I get to do it. And I'm sure Hollywood is one of those industries also where the most powerful, important people in the world, in every other line of work, deep down, what they'd really like to be is they'd like to be some of the things that you take for granted and get to do some of the things that you take for granted. And the fact that everyone else wants it and is jealous of it doesn't necessarily mean that it's good, but it should give us some perspective and make us appreciate, what we're lucky enough to get to do.
Indeed. Yep. Absolutely.
Speaking of which, I interviewed your colleague Michael Schur a while ago. I think it's funny that multiple philosophical books have come out of that that show. Actually, BJ's books are pretty great too. My kids are obsessed with them.
Oh, that's great. That's interesting. And there could be a lot more written. I mean, Mindy Kaling is a brilliant writer, and Greg Daniels, our showrunner, he's a fantastic thinker. He's got an incredible mind. So hopefully one day we'll be met with some philosophical work from Greg Daniels, and hopefully soon we get Creed Bratton's memoir, because his life story is zonkers.
Well, as we wrap up here, I had one sort of question, and I thought it's worth sort of clarifying for the listeners. They might be wondering, why we haven't talked a ton about The Office, which I am a huge fan of. Talk to me about the position you guys are in and what's going on. As an author, I look at the Writers Guild and the Actors Guild, and I'm jealous because the Authors Guild is basically non-existent. We're all sort of lone wolves. We don't have any collective real ability to come together and fight for sort of the successful authors are just get to go on and be successful. They don't really get to or think much about the other people that are struggling, and vice versa. So talk to me about that, just as I think it's always worth communicating, what a group is taking a stand about.
Well, yeah, and you should get Mike Schrute. He's on the negotiating committee. You should get him involved in this conversation. I don't know all the details, but I will say this, that so the writers and actors are on strike. Essentially, this is very different than any other strike that's ever happened, because this is a completely different business model. In the past, strikes have been like, oh, our contract is up and we want 10% raises, and the studios only want to give us 5% raises, and so we're going on strike and blah, blah, blah. So, but this is different. This is like, when you started watching The Office, it was a very different television landscape than it is now. So streaming services, subscriptions, and
DVD. I watched The Office on DVDs. That doesn't exist anymore.
Someone sent me a DVD of their favorite show. I don't think I have a DVD player, and I don't know how to watch it. So
yeah, my computer doesn't have a slot.
Yeah, that's what she said. But yeah, so there's a number of different things on the table. With the new streaming model, of course, the streamers have gotten greedier. If you knew how little we made in residuals for our run on Netflix, your jaw would drop. Even though The Office was watched something like, 7 billion hours of The Office watched worldwide or something like that. It was crazy. Like, we just got a pittance. So there's not a correlation between streams, viewers, and pay, and there always has been. And so you're not rewarded for your efforts to make a hit show, and that's why there's so much. One of the reasons why there's so much crap on these streamers. So it's fair pay, and they're trying to get, network shows had 22 episodes, and we had a writer's room of 13, and they were employed for 10 months out of the year and made a really good living. Now they want to do, 8 episodes on Netflix, but they still want to own you for 10 months out of the year. But they only want to do 8 episodes. They don't want you on the set, and they want to pay you less and have a smaller writer's room. So it's all kinds of issues like that. Like, it's a whole new landscape. The problem is that none of them are really doing that well, except Netflix and Apple and Amazon. They're a whole different beast because they sell widgets, and they happen to have a side business, a side hustle with some content, hoping that if they have good content, you'll buy more widgets from them. So that's a different business model. You can't compare what Apple does to what Sony does. And so how do you get them all on the same page? And some of the other streamers are just not working. The business model for Paramount Plus, for Peacock, some of these things, it's not working, and they're burning through money. There's this gold rush to try and get subscribers. It's an unsustainable system. It's not. How do you find growth? Once everyone has decided what they're subscribing to, maybe a few people switch from, I'm going to switch from Peacock to Paramount Plus, or I'm going to switch from HBO to Disney, and I can only allocate X amount of dollars for these subscriptions. But once you've maxed out, then there's no growth. So it's
Right.
And when they buy rights, it's worldwide. It's very complicated. I'm not even doing it justice, but needless to say, we're up against a lot of greedy bastards. And you talk about justice and the Stoics fighting for justice. This is not about me. I've got enough money. This is not about the stars. This is about middle-class actors and writers trying to put their kids through school and pay their mortgages. I was in that boat for many years before I was on The Office. I understand what it's like to be there. This is about a fairness for working class, middle class artists in Hollywood.
Well, and I think that actually ties pretty well into what we're talking about, which is, there is a divergence of interests, right? The super successful actors, the people who have made enough, and then the people who are struggling. And what is beautiful, whatever you think politically about sort of unions or labor, is when a group of people sort of come together and sort of all decide to sacrifice, even though they bear that sacrifice differently and it costs, different amounts. But when people come together and sort of get engaged politically, they get engaged in, sort of the economy, and they try to set rules or standards, or sort of use that they come together to be stronger as a group than any one individual would be. And we're all sort of, I think it's important that we remember that we are all the lucky recipients of groups coming together and doing that in the past. That's why there's a 8-hour workday. That's why there's a weekend. That's why, although some of these laws are being overturned, it's why children don't have to work in mines or factories. Like, we're all the lucky recipients of people. That's why you have a pension fund or whatever, health insurance. It's because people came together and took stands and took risks to hopefully sort of go, hey, here's what we'd like the future to look like. We don't have complete control over it, but we can try to set the rules to be at least fair or sustainable.
That's very well said. And let's draw a larger line there to a soul boom. Sorry, I'm going to bring it back to my book, but what the hell? We need a spiritual revolution because we need to do that on a global scale. And that
for a lot of issues,
for a lot of big issues. And this isn't about Democrats and Republicans. This is about human beings sharing the limited resources of this planet, acting as if those resources are unlimited, and living together in peace and harmony and cooperation, and fighting for justice on a global scale, and seeking ever greater wisdom, not just individually, but collective wisdom.
Beautifully said, and you say it beautifully in the book, and I'm so glad that we got to have this. It was a total honor for me. I really did enjoy the book. You can see I took quite a few
look
notes,
at that.
And,
impressive.
There we go. This was awesome. Well, I really appreciate it.
Rainn, it was a pleasure. Big fan of yours. I'm so happy for your success and the work that you do. And I hope we can speak again and meet in person and high five and wrestle for charity.
Yes. We'll wrestle over our, that's how we'll settle our philosophical differences.
I love that. Good. Through mortal combat.